Hi Alan,
James, g'day.
how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
I thought we should talk about house prices. Everybody wants to talk about house prices, don't they? And you were making the point that...
Never stop talking about house prices.
Yeah, there's national pastime.
Whether up or down.
But they're up, right? So they really are in some places hot, like 15% in Sydney, 12%.
Over 12
yeah,
months.
over 12 months, and 12% in Melbourne, 5% or so in Brisbane. But the economy is only growing at 3% or so. But your main point on Saturday was you're not particularly worried just now.
No, I'm not.
Why not?
Well, because a couple of things. Firstly, prices, except in Sydney, are just getting back to where they were. And secondly, there isn't a big bubble in debt.
But where they were was when we
Was
were
fairly
worried,
high.
right? Yeah, because we were told that crazy by international standards, household incomes, that the ratio was 4.5 times as what it reached at the peak, and we're nearly at that again. So we were worried the last
There's a lot of
time.
demand. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of fundamental underlying demand. It's not as if and the supply is restricted. So
Yeah.
it's a
And you say the
bubble. It
supply
seems to
is
me a bubble
restricted.
is where it somehow loses touch with the forces of supply and demand.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be what's going on.
Is it because they didn't build enough for a few
they're
years?
definitely not building enough. Haven't been building enough, and so therefore there's a boom in housing approvals and housing construction,
Yeah.
and an increase in prices. Look, I go along with you. I agree that the house prices in Australia are too high.
Yeah.
They are. And
But
they're still too high. It's partly because there's this shortage of housing.
And there's negative
Like-
gearing and there's a lot
Gearing,
of...
there's a lot of
You
demand.
could-
Now there's a lot of Chinese demand coming in. Self-managed super funds are getting into it. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of demand, and at some point maybe prices will get too high and it'll crack.
What about...
Already the market's softening, you should say. Look at this. See, there's a graph. I don't know if they can see that on the camera there. This is auction clearance rates already
Yes.
falling, right?
Yes.
Auction clearance is down a lot in Perth, everywhere. Sydney, they're flat, have been for a while, all this year. The auction clearance rates, which are the harbinger of prices,
Yeah.
are falling already. Prices are already flat
Right.
in the last couple of months. So it feels a bit like the boom is already over. It may be already over.
Just a catch-up.
Right?
then.
I mean, there's a bit of frothiness in the market still, and you keep hearing anecdotes
Yeah.
of auctions where the price has gone crazy over what the reserve is. Be very careful about basing any opinions on anecdotes.
Yeah.
You can't really.
Yeah. What about
you
for
gotta-
investors? What does it all mean for investors in residential property where the yields are 4% or so and actually falling because the prices are rising?
Well, I don't think you'd want to invest in something where you're getting a 4% yield, really. I think the prices are fairly high. I don't think there's going to be a lot of growth. If you're only getting 4% yield, the yield's not going to get any better.
Yeah. No, it's not going to get better, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Over time you might get increases in rent, but really, and so I'm not sure that residential property is a good investment at the moment. The reason residential property is a good investment ever is because you can gear it a lot.
Yeah.
You can gear it much more than you can shares,
Yeah.
and therefore a 10% increase in price over 12 months can turn into a 30% increase in investment.
You can make some real capital.
You can make some real capital
Yeah.
gains because you can
Yeah.
gear it a lot more,
Yeah.
and people are inclined to do that, and
Right.
so. But of course it gears on the way down too.
Well, just to cover off on this, what would worry you about house prices if they're more or less coming back to where they were at the last peak of the cycle, which I think was 210 or so, and if we see that the clearance rates are leveling off, what would you be
Well,
concerned?
obviously, if house prices kept rising another 12 months, another 15% in Sydney, you'd think,
Yeah.
well, gee,
Yeah.
that's too much.
Okay.
And so then, because I don't think interest rates are going to rise for a while. Like Glenn Stevens has been very clear that interest rates are where they are for a long time, probably the rest of the year. If house prices kept rising for another 12 months, and then in 12 months' time interest rates rose for the first time, that'd be disruptive.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that's right.
Okay. Thanks very much, Alan.